listen closely, before cities were filled with electric light, before courts and modern prisons, there were stone rooms hidden beneath castles and town halls where time moved slowly and the outside world felt very far away. Tonight, the rain falls softly on the roof above the old fortress. Torches flicker along the corridor. Iron doors rest silencing in the darkness, and somewhere behind those doors, life continues quietly inside a medieval prison. So take a slow breath. Let the sound of distant footsteps echo through the stone halls, and step carefully with me into the quiet shadows of the past. The prison lies beneath the castle, deep beneath it, far below the warm halls where nobles eat their meals and servants carry lanterns through long corridors. Down here, the air feels different, cooler still. The only light comes from a few torches burning along the stone walls. Their flames flicker gently, casting long shadows that stretch across the narrow corridor. You walk slowly along the passage. Your footsteps echo softly against the stone floor. In medieval castles, prisons were rarely designed for comfort. Most were small chambers carved into the thick foundation walls of the fortress. Their purpose was not always punishment. Sometimes prisoners waited here before a trial. Sometimes they stayed only a few nights, but sometimes they remained much longer. The corridor smells faintly of damp stone and old iron. Moisture gathers along the walls where the underground air touches the cold rock. A single torch crackles beside a heavy wooden door. Iron bars cross a small window in the center of the door. Inside, the faint shape of a prisoner sits quietly on the floor. You pause for a moment. The man inside the cell does not move much. He sits with his back against the wall, wrapped in a rough wool cloak. His breathing is slow, calm. In the medieval world, prisoners often spent long hours simply waiting for food, waiting for news, waiting for the sound of footsteps that might signal a guard arriving, or a messenger, or perhaps freedom. You continue walking down the corridor. More doors appear along the walls, some closed, some empty, each one holding its own quiet story. The torchlight flickers again, and the deep medieval prison continues its silent watch beneath the castle. One of the cell doors creaks open slowly. Inside, the room is smaller than you might expect, barely wide enough for a person to lie down comfortably. The walls are made of rough stone blocks stacked carefully together centuries ago. In places, the mortar between the stones has begun to crumble. Small patches of moss grow where moisture collects. The floor is cold, uneven. A thin layer of straw lies across the ground, meant to serve as bedding. It is not much, but it offers some protection from the damp stone. In medieval prisons, comfort was rarely a priority. Most cells contained only the simplest necessities: a clay jug of water, perhaps a wooden bowl, sometimes a blanket, sometimes nothing at all. A small barred window sits high on the wall. Through it, a faint glow of moonlight filters down into the cell. The light is pale and quiet, enough to soften the darkness, but not enough to fully illuminate the room. The prisoner inside sits quietly beneath the window. He listens to the distant sounds of the castle above. Footsteps, a door closing somewhere far away, the muffled voice of a guard speaking in the corridor. Life continues above him, but down here, time feels slower. The hours pass quietly, one moment blending gently into the next. For many prisoners, patience became their greatest skill, because inside these stone walls there was little else to do. Above the prison, the castle grows quiet as night deepens. Servants extinguish candles. The kitchens fall silent. Even the guards along the outer walls speak in softer voices as the late hours arrive. But down here, beneath the castle, the prison never fully sleeps. A guard walks slowly along the corridor. His lantern sways gently with each step. The warm light moves across the stone walls, revealing iron rings bolted into the rock and heavy wooden doors reinforced with metal bands. The guard pauses beside one of the cells. He listens for a moment. Inside, a prisoner shifts quietly in the straw. Satisfied that all is calm, the guard continues walking. The lantern light fades slowly as he disappears deeper into the corridor. Somewhere above, the wind brushes against the castle towers. The faint sound travels through the stone like a distant whisper. Inside the prison cells, most prisoners now rest. Some sleep. Others lie awake in the darkness, watching the pale moonlight move slowly across the walls. In medieval prisons, nights could feel very long, yet the quiet of the night also brought something unexpected. Stillness, a moment where the world slowed down, where even prisoners could close their eyes and drift briefly into dreams. The torch beside the corridor flickers once more, and the deep underground prison continues its silent vigil beneath the sleeping castle. Morning arrives slowly beneath the castle. Long before the sun rises high enough to warm the stone walls above, faint light begins to slip through the narrow windows of the fortress. But down here, inside the prison, morning feels almost the same as night. The underground air remains cool. The stone walls hold their quiet stillness. Only the faintest change in light reaches the cells. A guard walks down the corridor, carrying a wooden bucket and several clay bowls. His boots echo softly against the floor. This is one of the first tasks of the morning. Food for the prisoners. Medieval prisons rarely provided elaborate meals. Most prisoners received simple food, just enough to keep them alive. The guard stops beside the first cell. He unlocks a small hatch built into the door. The wood creaks slightly as it opens. Inside the hatch, he slides a bowl forward. A thick barley porridge fills the bowl. Steam rises faintly into the corridor. Barley was one of the most common foods in medieval Europe. Cheap, filling, and easy to prepare in large quantities. For prisoners, this simple meal often became the rhythm that marked the passing of each day. The guard closes the hatch again. The sound of wood against iron echoes briefly through the corridor. One by one, he repeats the same quiet routine along the row of cells. Slide the bowl inside, close the hatch, move to the next door. Inside their cells, prisoners sit quietly with their bowls. Some eat slowly, others wait, because in medieval prisons, food was not always guaranteed. Sometimes families brought food for prisoners. Sometimes monks from nearby monasteries delivered bread or soup. But in many cases, prisoners depended entirely on the castle's generosity. And so, even a simple bowl of barley porridge could feel like a small comfort in the cold stone rooms beneath the fortress. As the morning hours pass, the prison slowly fills with quiet sounds, not loud sounds, not chaos, just the subtle rhythm of life beneath the castle. Somewhere down the corridor, a prisoner coughs softly. Another shifts the straw bedding across the stone floor. The faint clink of iron chains echoes briefly from one of the deeper cells. These sounds blend together in a strange way, almost like a distant conversation between the walls themselves. The guard returns later with a small lantern. Even during the day, the prison remains dim. The underground chambers rarely see direct sunlight. The lantern light reveals details that are easy to miss in the darkness. Old scratches carved into the stone walls, small marks where previous prisoners counted the passing days. Some walls hold dozens of these marks, short lines scratched carefully into the rock, a quiet record of time, days, weeks, sometimes months. For many prisoners, these simple marks became the only way to measure their lives inside the dungeon. The guard pauses beside one cell. Inside, an older prisoner sits near the wall. His hair is thin and gray, his cloak worn from years of use, yet his eyes remain calm, patient. Some prisoners in the medieval world were not criminals in the modern sense. Debtors, political rivals, travelers accused of theft. Life in a medieval prison could happen to many different people, and often the waiting itself became the hardest part. Waiting for judgment, waiting for news from the outside world, waiting for the sound of footsteps that might change everything. Around midday, something changes. A faint beam of sunlight reaches deeper into the prison corridor. High above, the sun has climbed high enough to slip through a narrow ventilation shaft carved into the castle foundation. The beam of light touches the stone floor, illuminating a small patch of dust drifting slowly through the air. For a moment, the prison feels almost peaceful. The light warms the stone slightly. Prisoners notice it immediately. In some cells, figures move closer to the walls where the sunlight reaches, stretching their hands toward the warmth. For people who spend long days in darkness, even a small beam of light can feel powerful. The guard notices it too. He pauses for a moment beside the wall, watching the thin ribbon of sunlight slowly move across the floor. In medieval castles, architects rarely plan prisons with comfort in mind, but sometimes small openings meant for air or drainage allowed tiny glimpses of the outside world. Through one narrow window, a prisoner might see a patch of sky, a drifting cloud, or perhaps the shadow of a bird flying overhead. These small sights reminded prisoners that the world beyond the stone walls still existed. Fields, villages, forests, life continuing just beyond reach. Slowly, the beam of sunlight shifts across the floor, then fades again as the afternoon clouds pass over the castle. The corridor returns to its familiar dimness, but the memory of that small moment of light lingers quietly inside the prison walls. Life inside a medieval prison was not only defined by prisoners. The guards played an important role in the quiet rhythm of the dungeon. Most guards were not cruel men. They were soldiers, assigned to protect the castle and maintain order. Their duties were simple: watch the prisoners, deliver food, keep the doors locked. Many guards spent long hours walking the same corridor, day after day, listening to the same echoes of footsteps against stone, watching the same flickering torches along the walls. Some guards spoke with prisoners, occasionally a short conversation through the iron bars, a few words exchanged during the quiet hours of the night. In small castles, guards and prisoners sometimes became familiar with one another, not friends, but something close to it, because inside these underground corridors, everyone shared the same quiet world, the The same cold air, the same long nights, and the same steady passage of time beneath the fortress above. As the afternoon slowly fades, the sky above the castle begins to darken. Clouds gather across the horizon. At first, the prisoners inside the dungeon notice nothing, but the guards hear it first, a distant rumble of thunder rolling across the hills beyond the fortress. The sound travels through the stone foundations of the castle, faint but unmistakable. A storm is coming. Above the castle walls, wind begins to move through the towers and courtyards. Flags hanging from the battlements flutter suddenly in the growing breeze. Rain soon follows. At first, only a few scattered drops strike the stone roofs, then more and more, until the sound of rain spreads across the fortress like a soft drumbeat. Even down here, beneath the castle, the prisoners begin to hear it, a distant rhythm, water striking the roofs and courtyards above. The sound is strangely calming. Many prisoners move closer to the walls, where faint vibrations travel through the stone. For a moment, they can almost imagine the rain falling across the open countryside, fields soaking in the storm, forests swaying in the wind, the outside world continuing its quiet life beyond the prison walls. A flash of lightning appears somewhere beyond the castle towers. For a brief moment, the narrow windows above the corridor glow faintly. Then darkness returns. The rain continues falling steadily, and inside the prison, the quiet storm becomes another companion in the long medieval night. Night arrives slowly beneath the castle. The torches along the corridor are lit once again. Their flames dance against the damp stone walls, filling the prison with warm but flickering light. The guards begin their evening rounds. Footsteps echo through the corridor. Keys jingle softly against iron rings hanging from a belt. One by one, the guards check each door, listening, watching, ensuring that the prison remains calm. Inside the cells, prisoners settle into their places for the night. Some lie down on the straw bedding, others sit quietly against the walls, watching the torchlight flicker through the iron bars. The storm above the castle continues. Rain taps steadily against the roofs and towers. Occasionally, thunder rolls across the sky again. But down here, the sound is distant, almost gentle. In the darkness of the dungeon, time slows. Without the movement of the sun, hours pass quietly. Prisoners close their eyes. Some drift into sleep. Others remain awake, lost in their thoughts, thinking about home, about family, about the world beyond the stone walls. The torches burn slowly through the night, their flames growing smaller as the hours pass. A guard sits at a wooden table near the end of the corridor. A lantern beside him casts a small circle of light. He listens to the quiet breathing of the dungeon, the soft rain above, the occasional shifting of straw inside the cells. Another long night unfolds beneath the castle, quiet, slow, endless. Eventually, the storm begins to fade. The rain grows lighter. The thunder disappears beyond the distant hills, and somewhere far above the castle walls, the first light of morning begins to appear. Down in the prison, the change comes slowly. At first, only a faint gray glow filters through the narrow windows. The torches burn low, their flames nearly finished. The guard stands and stretches quietly, preparing for the morning watch. Outside, the countryside awakens. Birds begin to call from the trees beyond the castle walls. The air grows cooler as the night gives way to early morning. Inside the dungeon, prisoners begin to stir. Some wake slowly, Others remain asleep a little longer, wrapped in the quiet comfort of the fading night. The corridor fills with the soft sound of footsteps once more as the guards begin their morning routine. Another day has arrived, another day inside the medieval prison. For some prisoners, it will be a day like many before it, quiet, patient, slow. For others, it may bring change, a messenger, a trial, or perhaps even freedom. But for now, the prison remains calm. The stone walls hold their silent watch beneath the castle, and the quiet rhythm of life inside a medieval prison continues, as it has for centuries.